not asking ourselves what we want, not acknowledging what we want, not asking for what we want, because if we know what we want and we ask for what we want, we might become disappointed.
Hello, my beautiful friends. My name is Dr. Becc.
And I am Christine Barker, and this is Am I Doing It Wrong? A podcast for doctors by doctors. Dr. Becc is a mindset coach and medical doctor who specialises in liberating driven, professional women from the limitations of perfectionism, imposter syndrome, and people pleasing. She's basically the cheat code for getting out of your own way, showing up authentically, and living a life you're proud of.
And Christine is a medical educator and nephrologist who creates resources for doctors in training that I truly think are an unfair advantage. She makes complex topics super simple and takes the pain and uncertainty out of passing your medical exams. Christine and I connected a few years ago via our online platforms, and over the years we've discussed countless highs, lows, and in-betweens of doctor life. And in doing so, we've experienced firsthand the power of vulnerable conversations to show us where we're getting in our own way and underestimating our capacity.
So we want you to be part of the conversation and experience these same results. Every week on the pod, we'll be bringing you conversations which shine light in dark places, normalise the doctor journey, ease unnecessary suffering, and give you actionable steps to thrive in all facets of your life. So grab a cuppa and get cozy for this week's episode of Am I Doing It Wrong? The podcast for doctors by doctors.
Okay, we are live. Hello, my beautiful friends, and welcome back to the podcast. We are so excited for anybody who is joining us today because we gave you a heads up that we'd be jumping on in at 6 p.m. to see you all. So thank you for joining, and please share any questions, comments, anything that comes up as you go, because we would love to speak to you in live time. That would be so fun.
Just to give you guys a background, I woke up this morning to a Becc message on Instagram. She tagged me, and I mean, I love a bit of Becc content, so I was all about it, and I was having my morning coffee, and Beck's like, oh, hi everyone, we're doing this challenge. And also we're going live, and you should all join in. And I was like, oh. Is that what we're doing? So I actually haven't heard about this challenge, but I'm told this morning, as per this morning, that Becc has a challenge for us all. So we're going to be talking about that on the pod, as well as a juicy topic. We're going to be, I guess, talking about asking for what we want, but in a very special Becc style way. So tell us about this, because you were telling me just before we jumped on that this is something that has changed your life, that you used to be a different person, you installed this sort of strategy, and now you live your life differently and it's enhanced your life. So I can't wait to hear all about this. So tell us all about the challenge and all about this life hack that we need to jump on.
So the concept is Ask Santa. So that's why it's come up for December. I thought it'd be really fun to offer you guys this mindset, this strategy, this way of living for December. And I'd love to offer you guys a 3-week space in this challenge where you take on this Ask Santa concept for 3 weeks. And I'm going to be able to give you reminders for that. We'll talk about how we'll set this up so that you can start to apply or even just trial and error if this concept has anything to offer you. Because as Christine said, it has absolutely changed my life. It was something that I was just playing with. It was like 4 or 5 years ago or so now. I think I just moved to Melbourne, or maybe I just started my internship, and I was feeling quite like the world is my oyster, the world is at my feet, what is possible, so much is possible, so much is available in life. And then at the same time, I was so aware of how I'd kept myself, and I have this tendency to keep myself in this comfortable, small cage even. The way that I would set these perimeters around myself about what was okay and what was not okay, what was possible and what was unrealistic for me. And so Ask Santa was born as this funny little comment that I would make to my partner when I found myself deliberately stepping out of my comfort zone, stepping out of my preconceived ideas about what is possible, what's reasonable, what's realistic, and started just asking for what I wanted without the expectation that I would get what I asked for in return. Because remember, I was in this place where I was aware of what was possible, what was available, but this louder and well-practiced part of me, this smaller part of me was like, oh no, 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 that's unrealistic. Oh no, 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 that's unreasonable, or that's not possible. And so when I asked for these things, I felt ridiculous. I felt like I was asking for too much, for so much. I thought I was being extra, and the chances of my request being met were very, very low. So Ask Santa was this idea that you can ask for what you want, put it out there, and see what comes back to you, even if you think it's ridiculous. When you ask, you put yourself in the arena, you make it possible. And that's the other part of Ask Santa. It's the idea that if you don't believe, you won't receive. If you don't believe that it's possible, like that one part of me that thought all these things were unrealistic and impossible, I was counting myself out and not even letting myself step into the arena. I was guaranteeing that it wouldn't be possible. I was guaranteeing with my thoughts that I wouldn't get what I wanted. I was proving my old, smaller self right at the moment that I didn't ask. So this is the concept that I'd love to offer you guys for December. I would love for you to lead into December. So starting this Friday, Friday the 1st of December, and for the 3 weeks leading up to Christmas, I want you to try on in your life this concept of Ask Santa. It's asking for things that you think are unreasonable, unrealistic, maybe even not possible, and recognizing that just by asking, you are more likely to receive it. And every time you silence yourself, every time you reject yourself and don't let yourself step into the arena to start with, even before anybody else has got involved, even before the person or entity that you're asking towards or for has anything to say, if you don't get in the arena, you're guaranteeing that you're not going to get that thing that you want. And actually, Christine, you had this really fun example for me about dinner with your partner, which is so relatable to me. It's one of my partner's bugbears. Bugbears? Is that the right?
Yeah.
Bugbears? Yeah. It's one of my partner's bugbears where he'll ask me what I want for dinner and I'll be like, what do you want? And he hates it. I'm actively trying to break this habit because it's something that I actually think it's something that I have suppressed over time, my desire for certain foods, because I would rather just make the other person comfortable. It doesn't matter. I've at least told myself it doesn't matter so much to me. I'm happy with anything. I won't be affected in any big or small way if I don't have my preference. And I wonder if it's one of those things that I can't hear my want yet. So there's so many reasons to do this Ask Santa challenge. And you asked me why it's been so life-changing. It's not just life-changing because of the results that I've gotten. It's life-changing because it's changed the way I treat myself, and it's changed my ability to hear what I actually want. I thought I had the most bland personality so many years ago with no particular preferences and no particular desires apart from, whatever I decided my identity was in terms of being a doctor or whatever back then. And as I've practiced Ask Santa over and over and over, my desires are easier and easier to hear. They are louder and louder and more accessible. And I guess the food situation is one I probably haven't cracked yet. But tell me about your win in that scenario.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, just to preface this is not something that I would describe as a superpower. I think I'm trying to be a recovering people pleaser. And as I was listening to you talk, I realized that I'm definitely not as advanced as you are in this space. And I think what you said there was a really important point about how sometimes we can be so concerned with someone else's comfort and someone else's wants that we actually do silence our own wants. And I have definitely been in situations very recently where I can literally not even, I can't find what I want. I have no idea what I want. And it can be the most basic thing. But I have been doing a lot of, I guess, self work on boundaries and trying to know what I want for the old vision board and all the things. So I have been doing work in this area, and the same thing happened with me and my partner the other night. We were sort of planning to go for dinner, and he wanted to go for Chinese food. And I honestly, in my heart of hearts, I did hear what I wanted on this occasion, and I was like, oh, actually, I'd prefer Indian, and I actually don't really like that restaurant that much, but he seems to really love it. So I was literally I could hear my own thoughts, and I was thinking, oh, just shove it down. Like there's like, what are you going to achieve with this? Just you really want, like, just go and have some black bean and rice. It's fine. So everything's okay. But then I don't know what happened, but I couldn't rest with it. And this is probably this sounds, I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but this is probably one of the only times that I've done this. Like I'm really easygoing that way, and I think that's because of people pleasing. But I was like, oh, do you know what? I actually would prefer Indian, and he was just like so receptive. Was like, oh, that's fine. I could go with curry. Like I don't know what I expected to happen. The world was going to end. I really built up this situation in my head. So the most simple things, especially when I do have that investment in, obviously with your partner, you do want them to be happy, and you do want to, I guess, attend to their needs. You're not necessarily thinking about yourself. That sort of relationship side of things might be different from other places in my life, but I am 38 years old, and that's where I'm at, Beck. So I'm learning to ask for a curry when I want one, and it's so I need this challenge more than anyone. And I love this 21 days to change your life. I love it. Isn't that the recommended amount of time to do something? 21 days. By Christmas, we will be asking Santa for so many things.
You've pointed out such a important and nuanced part of this when you said I could hear that preference come up, and I could see these thoughts in my mind at the time. And that's something that's a reason why I want us to lead in our days with Ask Santa, because even just the ability to hear your preference is, I think, something that a lot of us have deconditioned, and I had just deconditioned. As I said, I had this like bland personality, I thought, and I didn't have any of those preferences. And as I deliberately listened out for my preferences in the moment, which often is more about tuning into, the thoughts can be hard to see sometimes, but when you tune into how you feel, then sometimes the feeling in your body helps you track back to what thought is associated with that feeling. So dropping into how you feel in that moment can tell you, is there a preference here? Do I have any preference here? Do I have any desire or any repelling towards the the takeout food? I want to rename the challenge, I want curry, or what was that?
I just want curry challenge 2023.
But in all seriousness, I had a really important scenario come up for me recently where Ask Santa will be life-changing. It already has been life-changing, and it's very relevant to a lot of us in the hospital at the moment, a lot of us who are overworked in an understaffed healthcare system, and a lot of us are taking on a lot of responsibility to prop up the healthcare system in this case. And so, for example, I've taken a 3-month contract to work in this hospital, and the 3-month contract fell over Christmas. And this year was the first year that my mother has decided to host Christmas since her and my dad separated, which was over 10 years ago. I was still in high school or maybe college at the time. So since I've left home, I haven't had a Christmas at my mum's with all of my siblings. And this year she sent the most out of character message, which is very Ask Santa, which was simply, please come to Christmas. And when I read that message from my mum, and this is the result that I want people to have from Ask Santa. My mum asking unapologetically for what she wanted in that moment, when I know that she has those same tendencies that I have, which is to default to centering other people and putting other people first, always making sure everybody else is comfortable first, and prioritizing their preferences over mine. My mum knows that amongst all of her children, we all have partners, and we all have, we're at that time where we have another side of a family who also want to have Christmas. And my brother has a child, for example, and the other side of our family in that case might want to have their grandchild or niece or nephew at their Christmas too. There are so many reasons for my mum to not ask if she's worried about inconveniencing somebody or putting somebody in a difficult position where they want to say no, but she thinks she's forcing them to say yes. And that's the last thing my mum would want. So when she sent that message, please come to Christmas, as simple and crystal clear as it was, no explanations, no apologies, I just felt like she put that preference, that desire of hers out to us. And then this is the difference as well. I know my mum's intentions. I know my mum's tendency and preference to send to others, but she loved herself enough and respected herself enough and stuck with her values enough, which is my family are important to me. I want to spend time with my family. She respected and honored all of that enough to ask. And that's something that I want to do more of in my life, and I want you guys to do more of too. Now, she could have said, we could have said no. Any of us could have said no. And then that would be hitting the tennis ball back, and then that was for my mum to deal with. But it was just purely asking, putting her request, and then allowing all of us to come back with whatever our answers were or boundaries were or preferences were as well. So this then jumps over to me, where now I had this work plan for Christmas, or actually this was before I took this contract. I already knew that I wanted to be home for Christmas, and that was one of my priorities. And so I asked the hospital if I could have Christmas off, and they said, yes, no worries, we'll get another locum. But that didn't come easily to me. That was still something that I needed the Ask Santa for. My initial thought was, if I ask for Christmas off, I'll be putting them out. They won't take me for the contract. Maybe they won't fill the job. Maybe I will leave a gap there in the workforce. So many different things could have stopped me from asking, but the Ask Santa principle pulls me back to, you ask and then trust them enough to have an honest conversation with you about what the answer is. And I think the thing that I find with Ask Santa is you almost never get a no. You almost always get a yes. So it's a win on both fronts. I think it's a win in the sense that you honor and respect yourself to ask for what you want, and you put yourself in the arena. You create the best opportunities for your life. And also in that, a lot of the time you'll be delightfully surprised that your partner's happy to eat the curry.
That's so interesting, because what you said there was you do use this Ask Santa principle. And another thing that's similar is, wouldn't it be nice if, which I think you've touched on, but I guess what you're saying is, even though you're doing this and even though it's changed your life, every time you ask for what you want, it still feels uncomfortable. So then it's almost like you said, you need the Ask Santa strategy. It's actually really interesting. So I want to unpack, what is it that is holding us back? Why do we need the Santa bit? Because I mean, we do, I definitely do, but why Becc? What happened to me?
You can see it in those thoughts that came up for me, right? So my desire came up, and then the thoughts came and suppressed it, or the thoughts came and rebutted it and told me why that desire is not important enough for you to act on. And sometimes that's those thoughts are high quality. Sometimes you have these desires and the thoughts come up and say, oh, no, like, we don't ask for that because X, Y, Z, or we don't really want that. The benefit to the cost is just not there. And it's true. But for me, in this case, the thoughts that came up that were stopping me and getting in my way were, in some cases, simply false. They were my prediction errors, they were my thought errors, they were my misunderstandings, they were these false dichotomies and false meaning that I've added, and they're thoughts that you want to pull up. You want to prompt them in yourself. You want to become more aware of them, because sometimes your brain is just offering you nonsense, and then that nonsense guides your decision. And also, the other reason is it's hard because you do have competing values. You know, some of the thoughts that came up were truly rivaling my desire. Some of the thoughts that came up were, you know, well, if I've taken this contract, isn't the right thing to do to take it in full, perhaps? Or it's possible that I'll leave a gap in the healthcare system. And guys, this was like I was in Albury, this must have been like in July or something this year. But still, the concern that there would be a gap because of my absence, because of my desire in the healthcare system, that's something that is actually something that I want to weigh up. It's an important competing value for me. So you just want to bring up or let yourself hear all of those thoughts. So part of our center is hearing the desires, but another part of just becoming more aware of your thoughts and managing your mind is that you also bring up the rebuttals as well. And then once you're able to see both sides of the story, then from your integrity, you get to make a decision. And the reason that our center is so important to me is because, and the reason why I think it will be life-changing for a lot of people is because it only takes one thought to slam down any of my desires. That's all it used to take. This one thought that was like, don't be too much. Don't ask for too much. Don't be inconvenient. Simple thoughts that could apply to any desire I ever had. Be the status quo. Don't rock the boat. Those thoughts. And those thoughts, they would slam down my desire, and they weren't consistent with my integrity and my values. So bringing in our center is just this way to recognize, have that pattern recognition and that intentional interruption of that pattern, the suspicion that your brain will do that, to then create that space for yourself to bring up your desires versus your objections. And I like the idea of playing with things that are, wouldn't it be nice, this sort of like magical our center idea, because it's a fun place to play. You know, you could do it with like very simple little things like, oh, could I have an extra straw in my drink? Could I have a second cookie with my coffee, kind of thing? Silly little mundane things. And the idea is respecting yourself, honoring your desires, and also creating evidence in the world that sometimes when you ask for something, it's not just that it might not just be an inconvenience for somebody else or something like that, something that takes from somebody else, but sometimes it can even be a positive thing all round as well. But we just shut ourselves down so quickly that we never get to build that alternative evidence base.
And I love what you said there as well. You said so much in that, but I feel like what I was sort of hearing in there was that you weren't attached to the outcome. So you would ask Santa in this playful, magical way. You weren't taking it too seriously, because I think on the other side of asking for what you want can be severe disappointment. And I think that we can all relate to that feeling, or maybe not everyone, but a lot of us could relate to that feeling of not asking ourselves what we want, not acknowledging what we want, not asking for what we want, because if we know what we want and we ask for what we want, we might become disappointed. And that is a harder feeling than just being like, meh, I just go with the flow. I'm just completely emotionally neutral right now. I have no responsibility over my reality. Like, it feels like easier in a way because you don't have to build yourself up for disappointment. And I think a lot of people do live their lives from that point. So the Ask Santa thing does actually overcome that as well, because you don't attach yourself to the outcome. It's just fun. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. And the thing that I would add to that, that we don't want to see and we don't often see, is we are afraid of somebody else rejecting us and us feeling disappointed. So to avoid that situation, we reject ourselves. That desire comes up and we reject it. We say it's not that important. It's not worth acting on. You're not worth the opportunity to have that desire filled. And I think what you say is this situation where we just try and go with the flow and be easy and decide that we just don't have needs or decide that we just don't want those things. I think it's a really insidious and clever coping mechanism, as you say, to avoid those emotions. You tell yourself a different story that, you're avoiding disappointment and you're avoiding rejection, that rejection that will cause the disappointment. All the while, you're rejecting yourself. And when I saw myself doing that, I realized that that result would accumulate in my life. And that was a part of why I keep coming back to this idea that I wasn't my full self then. And I didn't even know what my full self was. I had no idea what my preferences were because I'd gotten so good at that coping strategy to avoid the disappointment, to avoid the rejection by just rejecting myself in advance. So, yeah, I'd like to bring that to anybody's attention who thinks that they're outsmarting this emotional pain and avoiding it.
It's probably a little bit different because I think this is a really lovely positive thing you're doing where you're finding out what you want and asking for what you want and keeping it magical. But I can't help but think of some scenarios that I've been in the past, especially in the clinical scenario where you get a little bit caught off guard because you are people pleasy at baseline. That's the kind of default mode. And you're worried about the way you behave and what you say yes and no to and how that impacts you. And I guess an example that I was in a few years ago was I had a colleague who was off sick, and they were off sick for quite a while, and we were sort of taken into the office as the registrars, and the plan from the hospital was to, well, you now fill in the gap, right? So you now work all this overtime and all the things and just fill in the gap. And at the time that happened, I thought that was just how things were, and I just went with the flow, and I didn't really think about what I actually wanted or anything like that. It just is. But I was actually thinking about this the other day, so it's so timely. I was thinking about if I could go back in time, I probably would have realized that I didn't really want to do that, and I would have probably, if I had said and the other registrar had said, actually we're not gonna do that, then they would have had to fill in the blanks, right? We wouldn't have been the plan if we just set some very clear boundaries together as a group. And it's a little bit different from what you're saying, but I think my point is that I didn't know what I wanted, and I didn't know that I could have what I wanted even if I knew. I didn't know that there was space for me to want anything or say anything. And I think that is a common scenario. And just tuning into what you're saying and asking Santa more and being more conscious of what you want when you get caught off guard by someone asking you to do something, even if you don't know in the moment, it might even be good to be like, oh great, I'll think about that, and then go away and actually have a wee think about what you want to do. Just give yourself permission to actually have a want and have some ideas about whatever it is you're saying yes or no to. Yeah.
Yes. Don't auto reject. Give yourself an opportunity to decide, do I want to act on this desire? Do I want to put it out there? And you've brought up so many important points in this dance, because asana is just the first step. Asana is just you internally not rejecting your desire, listening to your desire, and then deciding to act on it. And then you've got other people's reactions. And I think this is a really important thing to mention with Ask Santa, because it will get in the way of Ask Santa, and everybody needs to decide how they want to hold themselves in the world and act in the world. And this is the concern that by asking for something, we're essentially demanding something, or we're putting somebody else in a difficult position when we ask for something. And I know this concern is widely felt, and it drives a lot of our challenges with boundaries and people pleasing, and it will come up in Ask Santa if you dare take on this challenge. And what I would say to that is the way that our Santa has affected me has also significantly improved not just my relationship with myself, but my relationship with other people. And I really like the values and the intentions behind how I treat people when I ask Santa. So what I'm referring to here is I will ask for what I want. I will honor my desire, what I decide to ask for. And I will not take responsibility for their answer. I will not make it mean that by asking that they have to comply with my demand. That's not what's happening here. Ask Santa is genuinely asking, could I have this? Could I do this? Could this work? Is this a possibility? Is this an option? Genuinely asking. Question mark at the end, not I'm taking this, I'm having this. And even then, as you say, so many of us have this challenge with people pleasing. And again, this is a default that I have that I'm constantly using mind management to work against too, people pleasing. And we understand, as somebody who has been a people pleaser, that the other person, when you ask for something, will be inclined to say yes, even when it's outside of their integrity to say yes. We know as people pleasers how difficult it can be to say no to someone's request. And so, a part of the reason why we don't ask Santa is because we don't want to put them in that position. We think that just by asking, we're implying that they should say yes, or we're expecting them to say yes. And the way that this has improved my interpersonal relationships, my relationships with my friends and my loved ones, is clarity, vulnerability, and assuming the best of them. So they not only know what I want and what my preference would be, apart from my partner when it comes to what I want to eat for dinner, but also I trust them. And I'm teaching them as well that I expect them to ask for what they want. And that might be a boundary that conflicts with what I want. In this case, what I ask for, or not even a boundary, but just a standard, just a conflict in what we want. What I ask for might not line up with what they want. And by trusting them enough to hold their own boundary or also tell me what they want, that is an act of respect to me. That is an act of me assuming the best of them too. And the opposite is true if I assume they can't hold their boundaries. They will lie to me. They will people please me. They won't tell me the truth. You know, if they're my assumptions about them, is that really the way that I want to treat this other person? Am I really proud of, is that really in my integrity to think that way about somebody else? So that idea about how our Santa affects other people will hopefully open up some thoughts within yourself about the kind of relationships that you want to have and what you want to perpetuate and reinforce in your relationships with other people too. And that's the way that this challenge can be really life-changing as well. And you know, you brought up this great example of our poor struggling healthcare system, and I just love that, you know, between you, like, well, you know, if I got my co-registrar and we got together and we're like, this is not okay, and you told admin this is not okay, let's just think about the opposite first. When you don't tell admin this is not okay, this is not safe, or this is just not how we should be doing things ongoing. Maybe, okay, I'll do it this weekend if I have to, and it's not totally unsafe, but we should change things for us and for everybody else from next week, from ASAP. If we don't tell admin that this is below standard, admin will assume that it's acceptable, right? And so we're teaching people how to treat us. We're teaching people what our standards are. We're teaching people what our preferences are. And on the flip side, if it's never ever one person's job to hold up the healthcare system, and it's an awful position to be in if you're the only person saying, hey, wait a second, this workload is not acceptable, or this is not what we agreed to, this is not what I signed up for, I'm not going to repeat this, or I'm not even going to do this in this situation, something needs to change. It is so hard to be the only person doing that. And this is a part of why our healthcare system is so far behind and so far below standard, because we rely on individuals to stand up and say no, and it's so hard to be the only person saying that's not okay, because admin or whatever powers that be will turn around and be like, well, these guys aren't complaining, these guys disagree with you, the majority disagrees, case closed. So what you were saying about how, you know, recruiting your colleagues in this case, and for me, just all of us sitting down and having these conversations about what we want in healthcare, how we want healthcare to be, as the clinicians who look after the patients, as the clinicians who watch the patients suffer. If we could all get around and just ask Santa a couple of times, ask the government, I know that a lot of us are doing that, and lots of bodies are doing that, but if you can bring Ask Santa into the healthcare system, and we can teach the healthcare system how we as clinicians want to be treated so that we can treat our patients properly, I think we have a lot to gain.
Yeah. And I guess just to sort of reinforce that, but also give it a different spin, because you talked earlier about competing values. I think that something that stops people necessarily from doing that, from speaking up, is because they probably feel a sense of individual responsibility for the outcome of the patients, and they feel like their actions have consequences if they put boundaries on doing a certain shift or whatever, that, or working extra hours. That in my mind used to translate to, oh, but something might happen to the patient, so even though I don't agree with the situation, because I care about the patients, I'm going to behave in this certain way. And I think there is an understanding that you've said is that people will take advantage of that. And I guess it's just to be very open in the fact that when I was a registrar and a junior doctor, that was definitely my vantage point, that was the lens I had. But now looking at it, I would sort of suggest that whilst it is a beautiful trait and most doctors do have that lens, the hospital is a system, and if you're working your hours and you only work your hours and you leave, it is not on you. Anything that happens, the hospital needs to be staffed. It is a system, it is funded by, it's not on you as an individual. So I guess I just say that to give people permission and perspective that, to alleviate people of that, I guess, suffering from thinking that you putting up a boundary has somehow impacted your patients in some way, because it's actually not connected and it's not your responsibility. It's not. So I guess I just want to say that. And I love this Ask Santa challenge. I'm so excited for the Ask Santa challenge, and it'll be so great to be top of mind every day. So what are you going to do, Becc? It's running on Instagram, is that right?
Yes, it's running on Instagram. So what I'll do is I'm creating a broadcast channel, so you can join that from tomorrow, November 30th, and from the 1st of December, the broadcast channel will be active. And so my core goal is to bring this Ask Santa concept, which is so foreign to so many of us, to the front of your mind every 24 hours. That's how your brain changes, with repetition and reinforcement, with rewards. So there's not necessarily going to be opportunities every single day for you to try this on. But I want you to be reminded of Ask Santa with this reminder each morning. So you go out into your day and you look for opportunities. So many of you guys won't even be able to hear that voice of desire or preference like me so many years ago. And so even just a win over these 3 weeks of just hearing that whisper of what you want, to me, would be so meaningful. And I know that some of you guys have some practice under your belt, and I'm also expecting some reasonably magic results from you bringing Ask Santa to your mind, actually executing on it, and getting things that you never could have ever believed were available to you today.
I feel like we need t-shirts or something. I feel like I need an Ask Santa t-shirt of some sort. Like it seems like you probably sell them in shops at the moment. I don't know. Let's get on this challenge. I'm very excited. I have no idea what a broadcast channel is, but hopefully I will find out tomorrow.
If you're following me on Instagram, then I'll send you an invite.
Marvelous. I'm such a nana with these things. Well, thank you so much, Becc. I am pumped for this challenge, and it's such a great idea, and I love that it's truly changed your life. It's such a simple thing, but oh my goodness, it does feel magical and impactful. So thank you so much, and thank you so much for everyone who tuned in. It's going to be an amazing countdown to Christmas, isn't it? We're going to ask Santa for lots of things.
Thank you guys so much. We can't wait to hear from you. See you next week.
Thanks. Bye.
I've been waiting all my life for something. I've been down the darkest roads and up in